Hi everybody, my name is Karen Brown, and today we're going to talk about one of the oldest forms of wood carving called chip carving. It is one of the few forms of carving that actually we found to be chipped into stone and bone and even old wood using just small triangles or notches taken out as a decoration. It is also more decorative rather than sculptural, where we're taking out wood in small pieces rather than carving in the round or to relief carve. We find that it's done usually on softer woods versus the harder woods, which are usually chipped or malleted. Mostly we are working with geometric patterns, this is a plate that you'll see here. One of our most common things is plates or boxes that you'll see with decorative work on. And here's a lid for a little box that we've done in blue so you can see it in reverse. Makes it a little easier to see. It's really easy to learn when it's practiced. Basically, you're using just a couple of tools. You're using these types of knives that are for cutting or stabbing. These are cutting knives. We also need to have a T-square with a ruler and a pencil, eraser, and of course a board to work on when we're working on our pieces. We also have a practice piece here which is done in white. Normally we're going to be basic cutting and sizing woods. We can use this in a positive or a negative pattern depending on how we want to see this on the wood to show up. The positive patterns are cutting away the background, where the negative pattern is cutting away the pattern and incising it into the process into the face of the wood. Basically, then we're going to work on the different types of woods we have. We have the oak, the cherry, the black walnut, which are all considered hardwoods, which are normally done with chisel and mallet or power tools because they're so much denser and darker woods. Where the type of soft grain woods, which we use, are basswood or tupelo, which are still considered hardwood but are very easy to carve. They're pale in color, from a pale white to a cream yellow. We can also use a butternut, which is a soft light brown, which frequently has pinkish tones or dark brown streaks in it. There's also an eastern white pine, which is good to carve, although if you've got to watch the moisture content in it because it is prone to splitting. And speaking of moisture content, we want to looking for a wood that has around 8 to 12% moisture. This allows us to have enough moisture in the wood to allow the knife to glide through without too much chipping or cracking when we're cutting pieces out. We want to make sure that we use sharp tools. I have stone here, which is a two-sided stone. There's a fine side and a coarser side. These are wet stones and usually have water or oil applied to them. This is usually for knives that are very dull and need to be worked down quite a bit. If you're just using a knife, if you're going to use a knife today, we're just going to take this leather strop and we're going to use this at a 10 degree and run this back and forth at just a real slight angle, because what we're looking for is an extreme high point like this on our blade, nothing like this. We want a very thin, fine edge so that we can make these little tiny triangles and pop them out of the wood. When we're using the knives, we want to make sure that we don't have any burrs on here, so you can run your finger outward off the edge and feel that it's smooth and polished and there's no roll on the edge where it would be rougher on one side, it would catch. And those can be simply done on the strop if you've done them off the stone. We have a couple of books here that we want to recommend. There's all kinds of them out there on chip carving. Wayne Burton is one of the grandfathers of chip carving. He is still teaching today. He shows at quite a few shows. He's very generous with his time and has written several excellent books. This one is one of my personal favorites in here. And we also have Basic Chip Carving with Pam, and you can see in here where there's the decorative boxes and things that have been done. So they're not just limited to a plate or a box, there's all kinds of things you could do. We're going to be working with primarily a geometric pattern today, and we even have things like this, which is just the basic chips and diagonals, but it's called an optical illusion. And in here, in this wood carving magazine, it goes through and tells you how to lay it out, and how to start and do the patterns. And it's basic, just the 3-cornered chips. So it's a nice pattern that you can work on. And if you want to get a little more adventurous or you like to do different pattern work, we have the southwestern piece. A lot of different patterns can be done with these, as well as the geometrics. You can also do free forms where like we have more curved lines with the feathers and things on this book. The best way to really work on a piece is to hold it in your lap because you have more pressure on it. But we will be working on the table today so that you can see it. We're also going to be working on this black piece of painted board because on a pure white board like this one, it makes it very difficult to see what we're working on. So for the camera purpose, we're going to be working on a black board. I did bring a silver pencil today to be able to show you how to do the layout on the blackboard and be able to see that. The practice boards are a really good idea if this is going to be your first chip carving. You're looking to lay the knife in here. We want to make sure that when we lay it in here that we just have the tip gliding in at the corner, and then we're going to not pull but plunge it into the wood and draw it back and out. It's more like almost like a V going into the wood. So it's just a practiced move. Keeping the thing in the hand, the knife in the hand, we want to have the thumb and the knuckle of the first finger touching at all times. This gives us control and balance over the knife. The second position is with the knife out, and this is the second hand position we're going to do, and this is on the opposite side cuts. And where you would start here, and you would put your finger on the thumb on the ground and push it, or thrust it in and pull it out. So those are the two-hand positions, just rolling the knife here and then to here are two of the hand positions that we're going to use how to do these simple chip carving today. We want to prepare the wood, and this has already been done. We sanded this down to 220 and a little bit of 300 and then 400 to smooth it real well. And then we sprayed it black before we beginning the work. We're going to use the ruler today to lay this out. We're going to use it in 4mm segments. It seems to be just wide enough to be able to make a good sized triangle that we can see when we take the chip out, but it's not too deep. When we make larger, bolder, broader patterns, we have to carve deeper. It's not always possible to do that with just 3 single cuts, so we want to do that whole cut twice. We'll take out the majority of the centerpiece and then go back in and carve the secondary piece over again much deeper, and we'll show you that as we go along and cut on this piece here. While the small cuts are real easy to cut, it's very important to cut only as deep as needed. If we cut too far in, we could cut into part of the other design or the space next to us as we're working. So we're going to start by laying out this piece here. We're going to go lay this out on here. I know this is going to be difficult to see because this is a blue ruler on here. So we're going to go ahead and lay this out and mark this on here. I'm going to do 4 rows on each side. And then we're going to take our T-square and just line these up. And while you're drawing this, every time you draw a line, just turn the pencil just a tiny bit in your fingers, and that will keep the point on your pencil much sharper at all times, and you will require less sharpening as you go along. If you use a drafting pencil, that is not as required. All right, now we'll go the long way. And we're laying out the border. Now a border can be one line or it can be elaborately done with many lines. It just depends, like on a picture, how many lines you want to do to frame out your piece. The border can be an accent to the entire piece, or it can be the purpose of the piece together and be the main feature. It's depending on what you would like to do with the piece that you're working on. The more closer the precision is on this, the easier it's going to be to carve the piece as we work. Okay, now we're going to measure this across. So 6, it's just about a little over a foot. And it'll give us our divide. And then from here, we'll do a little diagram in the center. Yeah. So now we've got the layouts done for our corners and across here and in our centerpiece. So then we're going to take our ruler again and we're going to divide off some of these diamonds to make the little triangles that we're going to cut out to make the pattern. In this instance, we're going to go across each one from point to point and just cut it in half diagonally on the first row. I start with my point of my pencil at the point of one of the corners and draw it diagonally across to give it the line I'm looking for so that they each match up from corner to corner. By starting out just in that corner, I know that at least one of the spots is going to match when I pull this out. You see, by starting out with putting your pencil down into the corner, you can mark much more quickly than if you try to do it just pushing it down every time at a different spot. It gives you something to bump the ruler against as well as to work against. Okay, we have enough laid out. We can get started on this. But there's our baseboard. We've got our corners drawn in, and we've got a little design work done in the center of the board. So now we're ready to just go ahead and start. When we start out in first position, we're going to lay the point at the corner of the triangle. We're going to push it in and then draw it back out. We're going to flip the board 180. And from there, then we're going to take the same, we're going to go into the second position here, and we're going to go into the corner, and we're going to draw it back by just pushing it in and pulling it out. And we'll go back to the first position, and come back. Again, we're going to do the same thing. If the chip didn't come out, we're going to start here. Put it in, there we go, and it'll pop right out. So we'll do it again, here, shove it in, pull it back out, turn the board, go into the second position, push and come out, back to the first position. And don't want to flick the chips out with your tip of your knife. It's a good way to break them off. We just go back in, slide the blade underneath the first cut, and then pop it back out. We'll do a little bigger one here. Same thing, but this is because this is a deeper square. We will probably have to go a little deeper now. Thrust it in, and pull it out. Flip the board, go to the second position, starting at the top. And then we're back to the first position for the last one. Let's see to get my first cut quite deep enough. There we go. And it gives us a nice clean little chip to pop out of there. Go first position. second position. Oops, wrong line, Karen. And then back to first. There we go. Not quite the same line. Didn't follow my line precisely. And then we'll come around and do this side, same way. There. Second position. And then back to first to do the long one on the bottom. See, that one almost just pops right out of there when it's done right. This is a nice fun project. You can take it just about anywhere you want. It only requires a minimum amount of tools and knives. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And now we've got our first diamond pattern out. Now up here I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to take and relief. This is the background. Now we're going to relief the pattern out. So in this instance, we're going to be taking out the center section. So again, we're going to start in our first hand position here, in first position 1. I'm going to push the tip in at the corner and thrust it into the wood and just pull it back out as we're coming around. It's this way. Press it down, pull it back out, back to position 1, and the chip comes out. So now we're going to be doing the opposite. Since these two are together, we're going to excise each of these diamonds separately. So we're going to do this side first, and then we'll come over here and do this side. So we'll end up with a rise in the center of these two. So we're going to do our position here as 1, flip it. This is 2. Oops, stay in the line. Angle's a little high on that. Now we're going to come back and do the second half of this. We're going to do this side. We're going to do the outer sides before we do the edge next into where we just cut. So we're going to do the outside ones first. And then we'll come and do this long one last. And then the way the butterfly stays where it's supposed to be, and we don't lose this center ridge here. You can see the blade doesn't need to go very far in as long as the chips aren't too deep. All right, and that gives us our reverse of this one down here. All right, so we'll do a few more patterns so you can get the idea, but it's all basic chips, and designing and laying out how you want them to go is all about the fun of making these patterns up. You can do this on little wooden boxes. For decorative boxes, you can do them on boards as practice pieces. And the more shallow, the tighter the triangles are together and the smaller they are, the less deep the knife has to go. Some people ask if you could do this with a razor blade or an X-Acto blade, and the answer is no, not really. The blade of these tools is hardened steel, and it can withstand the pressure that you could put on some of these blades to exercise these little pieces out. It's not that it's hard, but it does take a toll on the blade, and you want to use a blade that you have a good steel on so you can keep a good sharp point on it. If it's not, it'll have a tendency to pull and chip out on the wood. So then we have a little double triangle, single triangles going in 2 rows here. And then we'll do the double row of triangles here. So it's possible to do this sitting in a chair in front of the television or the radio, and just have a small box lid or a cookie sheet in your hand with a towel over it to collect the chips. And you can do this right in the house. There's no dust, no fuss. It's just a little bit of work to lay out the board, and once it's down, you too can be chip carving and decorating all kinds of cool things. Now we've exercised out the pattern out of here. We did a 4-sided block out of there rather than triangles. That's just the way the pattern worked out for me. But as you can see, you can do a lot of geometric shapes. This will lend itself to different patterns depending on how you want to cut it. If you want to do free-form lines or long lines like this, you can do them freehand as long as it's drawn on. You can see it. You can place the tip of the blade in, score down. Flip the board over. And then come back following the same line. But as you can see, the lines don't come out real even for the cut. So we can use our edge for that. So we lay our ruler on here right on our line where we want it. And then we stick our blade in. Flip the blade over. Drop it down just a bit. And in the second position, come back in. Oops. Come on, little buddy. Like it's sore tooth hanging in there. And you see we'll get a much cleaner, a little bit narrow in there, but a straighter, much straighter edge. When we're doing freeform designs, where we're doing multiple curves, it's going to take a little bit more skill to do that. So that's why we always start on our geometrics. We'll work on our basic pieces first, and then we'll go ahead and start with our curves. You can use a compass or French curves to do any of the design work you want on here. Basically, you're going to, again, making sure that your hand is in contact with the wood. You're going to insert the tip of the blade. You're going to follow it around. using the hand to turn. You can also turn the wood at the same time. And you can flip it over. A little too close. There you go. So you can pop that out. I can also come down and just do this fancy one here. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to come back in on this side. And with practice, you can widen and narrow them as at will, just with the twist of the knife, the way it goes in. And the blade doesn't have to be very deep, but it sure has to be sharp, so it can cut into the wood and incise it exactly as you want. Or we can take out wider pieces. Just depends on what kind of design you want. And as you can see from this plate, there's all different kinds of patterns and things that you can draw on your pieces to cut out with just using one or two little knives. Knives run about $16 to $20 a piece. This is a Flex Cut, which is a very popular brand. This is a lamp piece from Switzerland. The Swiss make really good knives. They have good steel in them. German tools are good too. The US has some good steel, and so do some of the Japanese tools. It's a matter of preference. The better the steel, the longer it'll hold a blade, or the hold an edge on the knife, excuse me, and it's less work to have a good sharp knife and a good quality knife. So if you're going to get into this, buy a good knife to start with. Make sure that it's sharpened well and to a very fine point on it, nothing wide, very tall and thin. If you have to look at it with a magnifying glass to make sure that it's straight, that the blade is sharpened correctly. Just need a few tools, a stone, a whetstone, and a strop, pencil, compass, ruler, and a block of wood, and you're pretty much all set. I do protect my blades. I use some old corks from some wine, and I just have a slit in here, and I'll put these back in here to protect the tips of these knives. So for storage, and to make sure that if any kids get around them, that the blades are covered, or that when they're stored in a special box or something, that they don't get chipped up and banged around while they're being traveled. So that's about all we've got for today. I hope you enjoyed our segment on chip carving.